I think it's more about the way that I am. Not I am with the world, but I am the world. I am everything. I am the universe. I am there. And when I let it speak to me, when I connect with it, we have a conversation. It happens to me a lot in my artwork. Sometimes I'm struggling about making these beautiful sculptures. I found all these found objects that the universe gave me. And when I start putting them together, I find this resistance to make it beautiful, to make it appealing. And then I realized that's not the process. The process is to let it speak to me, be open to it, to receive it, be open to receive it, because there's a lot in the world. If we're open, we're going to receive it. And I think that the world palpitates with us. The world intentionally moves with us because we are that.
Welcome to another edition of Chasing the Timeless. This is one I've been so excited to do for such a long time. I have with me a very, I'm going to say it 3 times, maybe 4, very, very, very special guest, Neto Atkinson. He's an artist here in Milwaukee, and he has a gallery called Neto's Catacombs.
Yes, the Catacombs of Neto.
Catacombs of Neto,
yes.
Okay. How did you, so I'm going to ask some questions I know already, but just for the viewers, how did that name come up for your gallery?
Well, when I was a little kid, I always wanted to, I used to play in the catacombs when I was a little kid. And one of the biggest transitions in my life was my biological father died. And that was one of my first jobs, to be a tourist in the catacombs. So a while back, I started creating all of this beautiful artwork that I thought, what am I going to do with this and how am I going to share it? Should I put it in the basement and leave it there? Or should I bring it out and share it with the community, And so I travel around the world a little bit and visit multiple museums that had a lot of impact in my life. And one of the museums that I visit here was the Milwaukee Art Museum. And in there, I realized that there was a smell that was kind of like bringing me back to my childhood. And I thought it was the smell of the humidity. And so I thought, wow, this is a big graveyard for art. And that sparked in me something that I still continue growing. I realized that maybe I need to make my own catacomb where my art is put at rest and only people can come and see it. The art only will come to life when people come and see it. So the idea of it was not only to share it, but to make it more, to share it with people. And that's where the idea comes from.
Mm-hmm. Where did you grow up?
I was born in Antigua, Guatemala.
Uh-huh.
So Antigua, Guatemala is a very colorful place, very beautiful. It has a lot of issues in there, but a lot of trauma and a lot of transitions that the country is always going through. But, for me, it's a very mystical place because it has a lot of also culture, color that is sometimes not seen, So
Mm-hmm.
Guatemala is a beautiful place. I was born there, but I feel like I have here in the United States is where I live now. And, all of my colors come from Guatemala. All of my ideas come from experiencing here in the States. And so mixing those things, I think, is what makes my art and experiencing around.
Now, what do you mean the colors come from Guatemala?
I feel like I grew up when I was a little kid, I traveled a lot in the mountains. And there's a place called Chichicastenango. Chichicastenango is a Mayan city that on market days, it's like if you are walking on a living rainbow, full of color everywhere. It's beautiful. And so I feel like that cultivates me and keeps me seeing all these colors, all this vibrancy that I bring here. And I think is in my blood too, you know. But then my experiences, everything that I get to witness here, is a combination. So I feel like, in a way, you were talking about what makes us human, and I really think that it's not only about Guatemalan colors; it's about the colors that, that are fluid in life, that I bring out when I create.
How old were you when you came to the United States?
The first time I came here was 13, when I was 13 years old. And then when I came here permanently, I was about 20 years old, yes.
So, I love how you talked about a rainbow of colors in life in the market. And that has some impact on you spiritually. It's part of your life. How are things different when you came to the United States? What's new and what don't you have here?
You know, one of the things that I was very interested in here is that people are people, you know, everywhere. And I realized that that captivated me so quick. You know, there's a lot of beautiful things here in the United States, you know. Differences where, for example, for me, that there's central parks here, but there is not a place where you go and gather. There is a place where, like, for example, the malls, that's where you go and gather, right?
Mhm.
But in Guatemala, in Antigua, there is a central place. There is like a plaza where everybody comes and dresses up and plays music outside and drinks coffee. Those things here they are here, but they're very rare. You know, the gathering places are very rare. So that's something that it was very quick that I noticed and different. But despite that, you know, I think like there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah. I've noticed, especially in America, how difficult it is to walk places. Everything is built around the car. And I think that impacts how we interact as people. You know, like your community somehow is different when you aren't walking through your community, through your stores, past where people live.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's very interesting too. You're right about that. You know, like in Guatemala, people are always riding a bike or walking around. Everybody's like, "Hey, good morning," you know, "Good afternoon," or
Yeah.
"Goodbye," you know.
Yeah.
And here is, you know, you don't get that connection unless you are in a mall or in a gallery, you know, that you're talking about, "Hey, good morning." But that's something that I feel puts us a little bit apart and distant from connecting with one another.
So this is a really broad question, but what inspires your art?
That's a good question, by the way. You know, I feel like uh, everything inspires my artwork, and maybe that's a general answer. But I think that even when I'm sad, there's beauty in that sadness. Even when I explore darkness, there is beauty in that darkness. So I feel like when I went to school, one of my teachers told me, like, well, if you drop Coca-Cola in a piece of paper, if you give it the time to see something, you will find something. And that was beautiful. That was in my mind always. It captivated me because now I look a feather outside and I see life. I see a story, and I utilize that in my artwork to get inspired. Conversations like this always make connection, makes me think farther and beyond that what I've been taught to think like.
There's so much in what you said to like massage and pull out. The first thing was when you were talking about there's beauty in sadness. You know, there's beauty in grief. There's beauty in like everything you see.
Mhm.
So a lot of people will think, well, how can there be beauty in sadness?
Mm. I think, you know, in order for us to understand that there is sadness, we need to be happy. right? And there is a duality that happens in everything. So when we find a balance between both of those, I think it's almost like the yin and yang, right? The black part has the white part and the white part has the black part. And it's almost like a circle that continues moving within us. It's almost an infinite cycle that we can understand if we stop to see it. You know, we can pinpoint where the middle, almost like the, per se, the silver lining is, you know, and that's very beautiful. Yeah, sad is pain, but it also teaches us how to endure, how to be resilient, how to see the world in a different way.
You talked about looking at that feather, and if you look at it, whatever happens in your life, if you know how to look at it, you can see the yang of your problem. So the first question is, how do you look at something from fresh eyes when you break something or something bad happens in your life? How do you even start to look from a different perspective?
You know, that's a great question. I think like throughout my life too, you know, like I had been broken, I have been put apart, and I have also broke myself in order to be who I am today. So I came up with an idea, and the idea is the not yet language of who I am. When I understand the not yet language of who I am, for example, let me give you an example. The way that I carry my hair all of the time. You know, as a Latino man, I'm probably generalizing, but everybody has short hair. There's a specific look, right? For me, that's not true. For me, the messier my hair, the better. You know, because I can hold my ideas in there. The wind comes there. It holds the energy of nature, right? So that becomes a language. And when I bring that out, that helps me out to understand who I am in the here and now. And then I can see something different. I can see the way that I can move and flow with the world. With traumas, you know, also, you know, like I feel like the way that I saw it is understanding that I am everything and I am nothing at the same time. You know, and in that power, I can be anything I want. So understanding that helps me out to be more, to be one. Yeah.
Yeah. And you said you can be anything you want. Does that ever cause problems or frictions when you try to, I mean, you mentioned two things there, just being and being what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of flesh those out a little bit?
Yeah. You know, like I feel like as long as I don't hurt myself or anybody else, who cares? That's true.
Yeah.
You know, I can be a poet. I can be the ink. I can be the paper. I can be anything. You know, I have the power to create a shapeless form of who I am. When I was in college, I remember knowing my master's degree for art therapy. I remember a quote that I saw about Bruce Lee, and he says, "Be like water, my friend." And I couldn't understand what he was talking about. But then it's almost as a way that you become adaptable to everything that is coming to you. And that, I think, helps me out to be in that way. Anything I want, as long as I don't hurt myself or anybody else.
That's a beautiful way to go through life.
Thank you.
And was there like a process where you started thinking this way? Was it a conscious choice? I want to be more like water. Like what is that? Like, how did you?
Yes.
How did you recognize that this is part of your spirit and who you are? Like, what was that process of finding that?
You know, like I mentioned, everything started with the not yet language of an idea. That was a conscious choice about what I wanted to be. then I created a process of what were my principles in life, what were my values, and my principles are things that I don't want to change. I should not change. You know, I learned here in America that privilege is a very important word, but privilege is only given to some people, or only some people have it. I feel like in this not yet language of an idea, we all have privilege, right? Even the ant. And I should respect that, because that presence could be me, right? If step on the ant, maybe somebody else is going to step on me, right? And so I feel like the understanding of how I want to respect myself, how do I want to carry myself, has helped me out to be better in society. Now, I also learned very hard that what I give out, I will never receive. So I have to create some assertiveness, some assertive healthy boundaries that can protect that as well, without hurting anybody else too, you know.
You mentioned the language.
Yes, the not yet language of
Not
an
yet.
idea.
What is that?
The not yet language of an idea are all my experiences, and maybe this is where I understand it better, because I unlearn everything that I have learned. For example, I try to learn to label happiness in my own words, not in the words that are in the dictionary or in the words that are assimilated by somebody else. I created that. So I'm not searching for happiness. I am content. Now, how do I define contentment? That's for me to define it. And, you know, contentment might be different for you. Happiness might be different for anybody. And that's the point about it. Because when we start living in that, that's a true way of moving through life, and ownership and responsibility and acceptance of the consequence that you're doing in your life.
I think a lot of those languages, like happiness, frustration, greed, pride, especially pride, are things that are taught to us as kids, and we're taught what we're supposed to value and not value. But it sounds like you're really making all those words your own, rather than, I think most people just assume everybody has the same meaning for those descriptions.
Mm-hmm.
And you're taking it a step farther to deliberately look inside yourself to define your own world for you.
Yes, yeah, that's true. And, you know, like, labels are very important for so many reasons, right? I don't want to diminish that something that already exists, but I think it's very important that I understand who I am in my way. You know, like, sometimes people think, people struggle. What's the purpose of life, right? And the more that I get stuck into that question, the more that I'm walking to my grave without finding it. When I realize that the meaning of life is me, it's here, right? It's everybody. It's you and I connected together, having this conversation. That's the meaning of life. That's the beauty of it, right? So, I mean, that's for me, but it changes for everybody. Some people might want to have a Alfa Romeo car, you know. I don't know, but that makes them happy, and that's great. That's beautiful. That's who that makes them. So that's what this is all about.
And you also talked about not being concerning too much about what other people's definitions of happiness are. Like, some people say, well, the meaning of life is family, and that person is interested in their cars, and that's materialistic, and I'm going to put value and judgment on them.
Mm-hmm.
And you aren't putting the value and judgment on other people that have things that would seem conflicting or not right for you. Yeah.
Yes, you know, like, that's something that I have. It's very difficult to do. I make mistakes too, but the judgment part and I think judgment comes from comparison, right? What is good for you might not be good for me, and I don't like that. I feel like for me, in order for us to be, well, we already are exceptional, we are beautiful and perfect. But in order for us to see that more in us, we need to support each other, right? We need to support in, you know, when somebody makes art and it has not the same standards as me, but they're doing something that makes them happy, we should cheer that up. We should support that, because out of that, you never know, we might have the new Picasso, or better yet, another Dali. So I think that that's something that we're missing in the camaraderie of humanity.
I was looking at somebody's art the other day, and it made me feel uncomfortable. The eyes looked a little demonic to me, and it's not something I'd want to hang up in my house. But yet, I saw the creativity in it, and I saw that here's a person expressing themselves through it. And it's like, wow, that's great art. I don't have to appreciate it, but I can recognize it for the humanness qualities of it.
And I think that that's the beauty of art, right? Because it triggers something in you. I don't like that, right? That's your language. That's so beautiful, right? And you're saying, well, I don't really, that looks really weird. But it looks really weird for me because it's something that is very, perhaps maybe not in your norm, right? And the way that I was creating, for me, in my process, I created this book called Healing Through My Demons. And demons comes from the Greek word daemons, characters. And so all of these characters, or genies per se, are things that are always changing in us. Like, I have a demon of happiness. I have a demon of sadness. I have a demon of a warrior, and I have a demon of a pacifist. Now, how they look, I don't really know. Do I feel them all the time? Are they welcome by people? Maybe not. It will make them uncomfortable, but it's because they don't understand the meaning that I put on them, right? And so when you explore that different way, it changes it. It changes it differently. And it does not diminish your value as well, because what you bring into the table is as important as what I'm saying.
Yeah, you're bringing yourself as who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, and anything trying to change that is just not clearly communicating, and being in touch with who you are. Even if you know that you're in a period of change or transition or want to develop, remove, being able to talk about those things that you want to change is an art as well.
Yeah, I think it needs a lot of courage. And, here in the States, I love these terms that I've learned, metaphors here. I love them. One of the ones that was very funny to me is like, I'm pulling your leg. And I was like, how am I pulling my leg? The other one is like, walking on eggshells. I feel like when we personally set a carpet of eggshells on how we should walk around, we are not allowing ourselves to be truly who we are, because we are always being unapologetic for things, right? For the concepts, the way that we think, the way that we don't think alike, it's good to have, we don't have to think alike, but we have to think together. And that's very powerful. But when we walk on eggshells, it doesn't happen.
I love that so much, because one of the reasons I create this podcast is to give people the courage to find themselves. But there's so many ways in our lives where we hold ourselves back and we diminish ourselves. We apologize for ourselves. You may even apologize before you even interact with the other person rather than just being, hey, this is what I think, and I'm going to share it with you and tell you it, and you're going to react, and then we're going to, talk through it. But there's always, I love that walking on eggshells. We should never feel like we need to walk on eggshells, I think.
Mhm. Yeah, I think walking on eggshells helps us out. It's almost like puts us back a little bit, because I'm a great believer of being responsible for my actions. But in the past couple of years, I've learned that it's not only about the responsibility that we have, it's also about being able to hold the consequence that that responsibility carries.
What do you mean hold it?
For example, as an artist, right? I can make a painting. I made a painting about Jesus holding the Sacred Heart, and it's squishing the heart. And in the other hand, is throwing ice. So with the political climate, I am not trying to go against ice. I'm trying to share the camaraderie that we need to come. When you have red and blue come together, they have purple, right? We create something beautiful. And the idea of Jesus throwing the ice is that we need to melt those barriers on ourselves. We need to make the metaphor of the ice melting of the barriers that are hurting us or that are not allowing us to see. But that carries a big consequence. That means that you're going to show who you are. Yeah?
Yeah.
And so when you have that, when you show it, are you going to accept that? Right? Are you going to nourish it? Are you going to carry it? Are you going to respect it? Right? And that's like very powerful. That's in a way very scary, but it's us. It's us.
You're showing who you are, not just the bad sides that you want to get rid of. And you're showing your humanity and connection, your vulnerabilities, your weaknesses. But those are all definitions and judgments that we were taught to put on things.
Mm-hmm.
Weakness, vulnerability, bringing in sorrow, having negative, mean qualities. And we put so much importance on the definition of like who we are and what all that stuff means, rather than putting the emphasis on where am I moving, where am I at this point, and not defining ourselves by all the stuff that we bring with us, but more on like what our intention at that point is. Because I feel like the intention is more important than what you have and who you are.
Yes, I love that. I love that idea. I always think that my biggest strengths are my weaknesses, because from those are the ones that I can push from, to be able to succeed. When I was a younger kid in Guatemala, in Antigua, my town is a very touristy town, but it's all full of cobblestones everywhere. And I was a skater there, a skateboarder, in Antigua. It's very rare to see even the side streets are very small. And I was a national champion for the X Games, Central American X Games there. And I'm sharing this with you because there is where I learned that if I don't push forward, even when I'm failing, I will never succeed, right? And sometimes stopping is a good way of succeeding. In skateboarding, I broke my legs multiple times. My legs, my tailbone twice. But I love it, and I still do it because it challenges me. And I learned two things in there. I think in Guatemala we had this. Here in the States too, there is the no fear sign, and the Nike, just do it, right? No fear and just do it. So when you're in front of a set of 8 steps and you're coming maybe 8 miles an hour in a skateboard, you hesitate, you're going to break your leg. Yeah. And so I think like understanding and trusting yourself is very important in these transitions in life, in these things, because even understanding my vulnerability in there, well, 8 steps, 8 miles an hour, if I don't do it, I'm going to break my leg. So, or I do it. And that motivated me to continue doing it. I landed many times, and many times I didn't. But I learned by every time failing, I learned where I needed to put my foot, how much speed I needed. I didn't need 8 miles, I needed 15, and concentrate on what I was doing, right? So you're right. The intention was to land that trick. And I also learned something, that if I was trying to do the trick for somebody else to impress them, I will never land it. I will get hurt. So,
Because you're not completely there.
yes.
You're thinking about how it's going to be perceived.
Exactly. Yes. And at the end, if I do it for me, I just enjoy it and feel the way that the wheels were feeling the concrete, and the moment that goes bang, and in the air, there's silence and peace. And out of the sudden, for a second, you are free. And then, boom, when you land it, it feels that energy, and it's beautiful, and I think in life, we all do that sometimes. And the more that we continue like forging that sense, helps us out to be who we want to be.
Yeah. How does Mayan culture and mythology and religion affect your thinking in life, in sports, in art?
I think, that's a great question. I have learned so many religions throughout my life. My mom she was very interested in teaching us multiple types of religion. We were at the beginning Catholic. Then my mom tried to introduce Lutheran religion, Protestant religion, and my aunt was a Mayan healer, a curandera or a bruja. But she had multiple ways. And coming back to the States, it kind of opened my door for more religions that I didn't know. And so I consider myself a diplomat when it comes to this, but I do think that I have influence from everything, because everything has a truth. And I have discovered that more and more, that really influences my life in the way that I see death and life in the here and now.
Yeah. And so tell me about some of those ways.
I give you an example of this. Right now, I'm trying to explore the word native. I think language is a very important thing that we have to communicate, but I want to explore the native self as my body, the indigenous self as my experiences of who I am. So the idea of this is to explore, I am a child of the world, native to my body and indigenous to my emotions. And in this way, I belong to the whole world. There's I'm from Guatemala, I come from Milwaukee. No, I am from one place, the universe. This comes from the Mayan traditions, because they see the universe as a whole, and everything that is in there very sacred. So you are sacred, I am sacred. This chair is sacred for us, because it is helping each other in a way. So I'm trying to break down the terms of being a native and being an indigenous, because they have I think a very bad connotation, and so I think those influences in the spirituality of it. In my artwork, I use a lot of fire to do my own rituals. I have a sculpture here that is calling what's the spark within, and it's about the fire too. And even my logo in the museum is the fire and the flame within that keeps me going.
Yeah. As I went through my life, I grew up Lutheran and just kind of just broadened out from there. And you come across like Native Indian ideas here in the United States, but then you learn, wow, there's lots of different, you can't just stereotype one thing. Or I've been to India a couple times and intrigued by some of the philosophies there, Buddhism, whatnot. And I think a lot of people feel like you have to, if you want to value it, if you value the ideas of a certain religion, you need to somehow change yourself to become more like the traditional way people practice that. But I also feel like you can be in the middle of honking horns in the middle of the street with jackhammers going, with your own life, and be just as pure to the universe as you would be sitting on the top of a mountain in the Himalayas in a cave meditating. It may be easier without certain distractions, and it may be easier with certain rituals to remind ourselves, but those are all just tools. And oftentimes those tools or those images can get in the way of our just personal one-on-one connection.
I feel like, that's a very, very powerful thought. I think like when it comes to religion, we forget who we are. In the Catholic, they say that, or a Christian, they say that we are in the image of God, right? And I feel like if the tree is the image of God, right, I am there with him. Then God should be the light. God should be the dark. But when we play dualities, then is when we kind of like misguide ourselves, I think, from the understanding of that connection, that camaraderie, that almost empathy. I don't want to say empathy because I don't really like that word, but I like more the word sympathy. When we become more sympathetic, we can understand a lot better, I think. But I think, there are our tools to help us out. Perhaps maybe not connect with the higher power, but understand what the higher power is within us. And I think it's like the water, the energy that moves the water. And sometimes we forget about what's the energy that is moving our water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in your artwork, you bring, well, let me step back first and just talk about that duality thing that you mentioned. That's a concept that I know in science, I've heard scientists talk about the universe and physics and quantum mechanics and consciousness in the brain. And all of their processes of understanding it are dualistic. It's me and that. And I've heard experts say, well, that's just the most obvious way to approach science on this because it's so obvious to us. There's something I've picked up in my life where it doesn't seem obvious to me that we're separate. As a matter of fact, it seems more obvious that there's one thing, and this duality is a human quality of how we see the world. And it's almost like we're born, I don't know about little kids, but at some point in our culture, we learn to see things as dual. And then there's a process of on doing that, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
What was have you always felt an energy of like oneness with the world? Is it a maturing process of seeing yourself connected?
I think like as a kid, I always did. I always did. I always saw that we were all human. And the more that I learned about science, like you mentioned, I think science is a truth, right? That we have as humans. But I also think that as humans, we do have a lot of error. And is that error that makes us who we are. Without that error, we would not be creative, I think. We would not be able to love because then we will not understand it. So I think that duality is very important. But when we transcend farther and beyond those dualities, we can see more. We can see more. It's like, I've never done acid, but I've seen some images of those trips, where people go into a trance and they are all in one. But I think like we are always all in one. And let me give you an example. My wife loves to go kayaking. And, I thought, like, why do you like to do this so much? And I asked her, can I go with you? So I go with her, and she gave me this kayak that was kind of like shaky. And I was like, oh man, I'm going to fall down the river. But when I moved to the left, I saw some rocks, and I was like, oh, beautiful. I put my hand in the water, grabbed the rocks, picked the rocks. And I just saw this frog somewhere there. And then I throw one rock in the water, and I start seeing the ripples. And I was like, wow, those are really cool ripples. So then I thought, now let me throw another one and see what happens. And I throw it. Then I realized that the ripples they came together and they make a bigger ripple, but they didn't became two separate ripples. And for me, that was like, oh my God, what is this? This is like an epiphany, because it reassures to me that if you make a movement with your foot, I can feel that, right? And we are connected in that one. And I think spirituality and the higher power teaches us that. We fight against our own human nature. Like, for example, with birds, there's invasive species, right? Animals that eat other things. In my way of thinking, those are just being there, for us. But we think, no, they're bad for this. They're killing everything else. We need to kill them out. But they never came from Pluto or Venus, They're here with us. So how can that be possible that something like that is invasive? And that's where I think the lack of connection happens. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see it that way. I think that in that bird is God. In that dead bird right there in the street is God too, right? And so we don't see that. We have disconnected because we are too connected with other things.
Yeah. Do you see, this is maybe a little bit more deeper question. Do you see God as something that reaches into things, or are what we're seeing all around just, it is God? Like, do you see yourself separate that way, or?
No, I see myself as one.
Yeah.
I think like God is us. God is me. I'm not God, but God is me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. So, yeah, because, like when we think about unity, right? We need two to tango, two to dance. 1 and 1 equals 2. Without 1, there's nothing. And so I think like it's an answer that I don't have a question
No, there's no like really understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I like how you said that, oh, I'm not God, but God is me.
Me.
And then if God is that and God is that, then we're all the same. There may be some distinctions in us that make us unique, but we're all part of the same perfect energy.
Correct. Yeah. Thinking a little bit deeper on that, for the Mayan religion, a lot of we think about the God, the main God is the sun, right? In Catholicism, we think that God is a father that I never met, but we know about Jesus, so we know his son. But that was something that was taught to us as a Mayan religion. That was something that was brought to us, and I think to a lot of cultures, right? And so I think even maybe Native Americans, no, I don't think maybe. I think Native Americans here also have their own ways of finding spirituality, their own the way that they connect, to the stars, to the wind. So I feel like we all understand it differently. And for some reason, we have to make it hard on ourselves. And I think that's what makes life more beautiful, because it would be interesting if we only had one path, but it makes it more fun and more adventurous if we have multiple.
Yeah. There is something you mentioned earlier that I guess in the back of my mind. You're talking about how God is everywhere. Going back to the beginning where you talked about even the sadness is God as well. There's a period of my life where I was going through depression, and I distinctly remember driving down a street and seeing the branches of the trees just kind of weeping over the trail as if they're leaning over and kind of being sad with me. And it was sad, but it was also very comforting because it was personal with me. My emotions were expressed and shared in the nature and the world around me. And I really, too often now, when I walk down the street, I don't pay attention to the way the world presents itself to me. But at that time, where everything seemed sad, at least the world was projecting a connection with me. And sometimes it presents beautiful images with me. But I love your almost more constant connection. Like, are you intentionally looking at the world to see what's being presented, or is it just kind of part of the way you walk through the world?
I think it's more about the way that I am. Not I am with the world, but I am the world. And this sound very narcissistic and egocentric,
go there.
But I am everything. I am the universe. I am there. And when I let it speak to me, when I connect with it, we have a conversation. It happens to me a lot in my artwork. Sometimes I'm struggling about making these beautiful sculptures. I found all these found objects that the universe gave me. And when I start putting them together, I find this resistance to make it beautiful, to make it appealing. And then I realized, that's not the process. The process is to let it speak to me, be open to it, to receive it. Be open to receive it, because there's a lot in the world. If we're open, we're going to receive it. We're going to be, it's almost like I don't know if you've ever seen that cloud that has rain and people are walking on it and they always think that it's sad because you're being rained on.
Yeah.
I think that's to me, my mind is like, why are you sad? You should be happy. You got water under you, on you, you're taking a natural shower. But in that way, if we take the water off, I think that's knowledge. That's how it's coming. That's how the universe is communicating. I love the picture that you said, the trees were coming to me. and they were holding as well that sadness, right? And I think that the world palpitates with us. The world intentionally moves with us because we are that. You know, a while back I saw this video that the earth breathes and the buildings move, and I was like, well, if the earth breathes, how much I'm breathing and how much I'm helping to make that, to expand it, you know? And so I think that that's a connection. But if I let it come to me, if I look for it, it will come, but it will not be as pure as it needs to.
That is, I think, one of the lessons that I'm really trying to spend more time thinking about when you're looking for something versus when you're just open without caring what it is. Like, talk about like those two different approaches.
Yeah, you know, like for example, I feel like when I'm looking for something, it's harder I can achieve it, but it doesn't come out with that oomph, doesn't come up with that passion. So sometimes what I do is I create the drawing or the image of what I want and leave it there. And maybe in a year it will come back, or maybe in a moment. Sometimes, you know, when I was creating the catacombs, I didn't know I needed a lot of light bulbs. You know?
Yeah.
So I bought a lot of boxes of light bulbs, and I'm like, I don't have enough space to put these light bulbs. And now it helps me. But the universe was telling me, hey, you're going to need this later. Save them.
Yeah.
And I saved them, you know. So I was open to hold that space. That's probably what it is. Be able to hold that space of your intention and let it take its course, right? You can plant it. You can water it, but you have to let it take its course and let it speak back to you.
I think that is just an amazing, beautiful way to end our discussion here today. Just being open. I love that so much. I'd like to come back and talk to you more sometime.
Thank you. Me too.
Okay. All right. Where can people, what's your website?
So we are here located in the historic Third Ward. This is the Catacombs of Neto, and the website is thecatacombsofneto.com. And we are a free and open museum for everybody to come and connect with us. Come and talk about art. Come and talk about anything you want.
Yeah. So I've found you there's a gallery night where you can go to lots of different galleries. And we came down here, and my wife and I were just looking at the pictures, and you came up to us and started talking more about the meaning of the different things in the art. And that's when I learned about your heart, your mind, your connection, your soul. And it was extremely beautiful. And I knew right away, it's like, wow, you are somebody I can definitely learn from. And I learned a lot today from you. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And you know, I would not be able to be sitting here without you. So here again, we exist for each other. And that's what makes it this part more beautiful. So thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode and you know somebody that might be inspired by it, share it with them. To learn more about the show, go to chasingthetimeless.com.